Good evening. International Epilepsy Day is celebrated annually every second Monday of February. Here at Hope TV and on the Health Check Show tonight, we continue to create awareness on various medical conditions, and epilepsy is one of them. What would you do when someone next to you gets an epilepsy seizure or a convulsion? What first aid would you give to the person before an ambulance arrives? There are many myths, misconceptions, and misunderstandings that come with epilepsy, some which include epilepsy is contagious, it's brought by witchcraft, or it's a form of mental illness, among other misconceptions. Tonight on Health Check, we have an opportunity to raise awareness of epilepsy, what it is, how it can be treated and managed, and above all, how to break the stigma around it. We are privileged to have Dr. Mahendra, a neurologist who is passionate about epilepsy awareness. In addition to treating epilepsy, he also works with communities by organizing free epilepsy medical camps every 2 months. We also are privileged tonight to have Frederick Beuchi, who is also a reverend and an epilepsy activist. He is also the Secretary General of National Epilepsy Coordination Committee. This conversation, remember, it's live on our YouTube and Facebook page at Hope TV Kenya. Please share the link with friends and family and anyone who will benefit from tonight's conversation. Begin engaging with us on our WhatsApp number 0708 222 323. That is 0708 222 323. Or SMSs on the SMS line 22232 on any question or comment that you have regarding epilepsy. Good evening and welcome to another episode of Health Check. My name is Grace Mutiso. Looking forward to a great time of interaction as we discuss epilepsy. Allow me to introduce my guests. I know I introduced them earlier on, but we need to know who is who that you're having tonight. Let's begin with Dr. Good evening.
Good evening.
Kindly introduce yourself and maybe say something I missed in your introduction.
Okay, I'm Dr. Mahendra Singh. I'm in Kenya for the last 3 years. I'm a founder director of Nairobi Neurocare Limited, which is located at Third Parklands. We are working for epilepsy patients because we are focusing more on epilepsy surgeries because we're looking for cure. I come from a training center in India, which has been one of the best centers in the world for epilepsy surgery. That's where I got trained in 2004 to 2007. And my teachers are few of the world's best teachers for epilepsy surgery. They train world over.
Yes.
They are at the highest level in the management of epilepsy bodies like International League Against Epilepsy. I've also done research work on that, and we do epilepsy surgeries here, and it's just the start.
Okay.
I also do patients for cerebral palsy, particularly spasticity management, and we also are involved in a spinal pain management. So basically, Nairobi Neurocare is just a young institution, last 3 years.
Yes.
But we have done a lot in epilepsy surgery. We have shortened the hospital stays in all the surgeries in neurosurgery and in spine surgeries from 1 day to 3 days.
Okay.
So that's what we're doing. And I'm very passionate about epilepsy and its cure rather than just giving them medicine lifelong. So that's what Nairobi Neurocare's mission is.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mahendra, for joining us. Good evening, Reverend.
Good evening.
Introduce yourself to us.
Thank you so much. So my name is Reverend Beuchi. I'm an epilepsy awareness activist, but I also serve with the Methodist Church as a chaplain of institutions. And I'm also blessed to serve the National Epilepsy Coordination Committee as the National Secretary. And so, in addition, I'm a caregiver of a sister who was diagnosed with epilepsy at the age of 2. So a combination of all that is what has really made me to be so passionate about creating awareness about epilepsy and just seeing how, as a country and every organization that is involved in epilepsy care and management, we can synergize our commitment to alleviate the problem or the challenge of epilepsy in the country.
Okay.
Yes.
Welcome, Reverend Beuchi. And you mentioned your sister was diagnosed with epilepsy
Yes.
when she was 2. How old is she now?
Oh, she's now 16 years old. Yes. And the good news is that she has been seizure free for about 6 years
Wow.
now. And it has been a journey.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll be interested to hear how the journey has
The
been.
journey
But let's
has
begin
been.
with Dr. Mahindra, just helping us define what is epilepsy.
So epilepsy is abnormal discharge coming from brain neurons, and it can spread or it cannot spread. So there are several types of epilepsy, but basically there is a transient but uncontrolled discharge from one particular group of neurons, and then they create a clinical symptom, which can be a sensory, which can be motor, or which can be something else like behavioral. So this in general is called epilepsy. But then there is a confusion, what is a seizure and what is an epilepsy?
Yes.
Yeah. So a lot of children early in their age, they get convulsions during high fevers. Okay. And then there is a tendency of as soon as they go into fever, they can get convulsions. These are called febrile convulsions. But they are self-limited. So after some times they can go away. So they are still called only seizures because they are each individual events. But by definition, if you have got convulsions or seizures more than 3 in a year, then we consider it as a disease, which is coming from somewhere, which may need some, it needs to be taken care of by a specialist. So then it's called epilepsy. Okay? So that's how there's a difference between seizures and convulsions and epilepsy.
So epilepsy, it's if you've had seizures, if I've gotten you right,
Yeah.
more than 3 times in a
Well,
year.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So, and usually there is a reason for it.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
The only thing is whether we are able to find that reason or not. Yeah.
And what causes that, Dr. Ari?
There can be several reasons. One of the most common reason is idiopathic, which means we don't know. But then now we know for past 50 years been very exciting for epilepsy surgery particularly because people started going deep into the epilepsy and its etiogenesis, which we call as etiogenesis, means from where it's coming, how it's coming. And we have now come to know that there are some birth injuries, some congenital malformations in brain, sometimes there is a tumor, sometimes there is a trauma, and so there can be different causes. But many kids, they are born with some abnormal tissue, and then they become a focus of convulsions, and they can cause repeated convulsions. I'll give you an example.
Yes.
That our brain has got a kind of a water collection is called ventricle. And ventricle is kind of a lake inside our brain. It's on both sides, and it constantly produces water. But around that is the basic layer of brain, which creates, which has got something called stem cells, and then they create new neurons, and they migrate from center to the periphery, because brain is a sphere. So consider that they are being created in the center,
Yes.
and they are going gradually layer by layer outside to the periphery. Why periphery? Because on the top layer of the brain is the best neurons that we have. Like we have something called as a cortex, which thinks, which creates activities, right?
Yes.
Which gives us consciousness. That's why we say that human beings are the most evolved animals. So those neurons, when they mature, as they go in the periphery, this is called as a neuronal migration. So sometimes there are migrational defects. Now what happens that, say for example, we have got a lot of lights over here.
Yes.
Consider them as neurons. But then they all have wirings which are going somewhere, and then they are gathering somewhere. So in big buildings, we always find different panels which are gathering all the cables which go somewhere.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Maybe to other room, or they connect with other rooms, or they supply somewhere else, or they're taking power. but we have created bundles of these wires. So even those neurons have got bundles which are coming down, which will eventually go to different parts of brain for coordination, or they will go to spinal cord for creating an effect in the body, right?
Yes.
So now when the island of neurons is going up, they have to go through these cables. So there's a gray matter and there is a white matter. White matter is nothing but a bundle of wires,
Yes.
which is connecting brain from each other. Okay, it may go from one side to the other side, or it may go from one side, the same point from other side, say from front to back. But they can also go from right to left, so they have to cross the brain. Okay. Now when these islands, sometimes they get arrested somewhere, but these are neurons
Yeah.
who are capable of creating some activity. So they become islands of abnormal discharge. So they also become epileptic focus. As an epileptic team, it's our job to find out such abnormalities if it exists. And the idea is if we can remove those abnormal foci of, neuronal activity,
Yes.
we can cure a child with epilepsy, right?
Yes.
Because we also know that if you give medicine for a longer time, even they damage brain. There are a lot of things happen with cognitive dysfunctions happen, working abnormalities may happen. So if we have a surgery, if we can find a focus, okay?
Yes.
And nowadays we have gone even further, there's something called connectomes. That few groups of neurons in discrete parts of brain, they actually act as a nexus, which is creating a convulsion of a certain pattern.
Yes.
If we are able to find out that connectome, the only thing is we need to cut it, okay,
Yes.
and isolate it. So when a particular focus of neuron or island of neuron starts creating a zone of epilepsy, that process is called as epileptogenesis. Okay, I hope it's not going to be
It's a
very
big
heavy.
word right there. Yes.
I'm trying to be as lucid as possible.
Yes.
So then it spreads. Okay, so it's very important to know the focus, and then all the action is focused at either completely removing the focus, or if we can stop the spread, because ultimately it will spread to other parts of body, and then patient can get maybe a twitching of the eye, or a twitching of the face, or maybe twitching of the finger. Then it spreads all over body and patient becomes unconscious at many times.
Okay.
So that's called a secondary generalization.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there is an initiation and then there is generalization. So if we can break the process, we can help the patient a lot.
And they can be totally healed from
Exactly.
it. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mahindra. Let's go to Reverend Beuchi. So, at 2 years, your sister is discovered that she has epilepsy. Is that what prompted you to, to be an activist?
Yeah, not immediately.
Yes.
Because the fact that we were told that she had epilepsy, that was after we had really gone to so many hospitals. Of course, we had begun to see signs, slowness in getting speech, and then she was having some of the what we would call maybe some shaking most of the time as she was growing up. But the challenge that we had to get a proper diagnosis then was to really get a specialist at that point in time, which was very difficult until 2013. So by 2013, she was almost 7 or 8 years.
Yes.
And my sister was getting seizures after every 20 minutes. So after every 20 minutes, she would get an attack, she would fall down, and you'll have multiple episodes occurring by the time the whole seizure stuff is done. So by 2012, it had taken a toll on my mother. I was already working in a shipping company, and in 2012 I had to quit my job. Just because when you leave the house in the morning and then when you come back, She has a fresh injury that you didn't see when you were going.
Yeah.
And I could tell that my mom felt like the brothers might think I'm really not taking good care of their sister, because every time they come back home, she has a fresh injury. So it was also beginning to really take her into depression, that feeling of what else can I do?
Yes.
And I'm always left alone with her. When she wakes up, my sister, like my mom would not do anything. So you would go to work, you come back, you would see the house the way you left it in the morning when you left. The house chores are not done. Because if somebody gets a seizure after every 20 minutes, you never know when it will occur.
Yeah.
So you want to be with her all the time. Yeah. So when I quit to just come home and help her, actually take care of her. So it would either be me sitting down with my sister for her to do other works, or me doing the housework, which is the most of what I did for her to take care of my sister. Then one day I saw an interview on TV. They were talking about epilepsy, and they were going to have an epilepsy open day
Yes.
here in Nairobi, because my home is in Mombasa. It was on a Wednesday, so on a Friday, I boarded the bus, I came to Mombasa. It was at Uhuru Park, the first epilepsy open day that had been organized by National Epilepsy Coordination Committee. So I came blindly without my sister, of course, and I stayed on those long lines until evening. I was able to get this one doctor,
Yes.
who, of course, by now, I know him as one of the epileptologists in Kenya. And when I explained my case to the doctor, he came to Mombasa. He was so moved by the whole act. I think I was the one who was coming from very far.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when he came down to Mombasa, did the diagnosis, they did a test called EEG, which maybe Dr. can talk about it more. And they were able to tell exactly what part of the brain had been affected. They established it was she had suffered cerebral malaria. And when they got the right diagnosis now, they put her under medication.
Okay.
So fast forward, after getting the proper medication for like 3 years, we started seeing a big change. The doctor would tell us the most important thing in treatment of epilepsy is actually arresting the seizure, because that's what makes somebody prone to feeling like they cannot lead a normal life, with the fear of, if I go out there and I get an attack, it distorts me a bit. So it started to reduce actually the frequency of seizure from 20 minutes to, it would take 2 hours, to a week it will be thrice or twice, to a whole month it will only be once, to right now as we talk, her being 16 years old, she has been seizure free for about 6 years, now running to 7 years.
Wow.
Yes. So that's where now my passion to spread awareness about epilepsy came about.
Interesting, interesting. If you're watching us, I'm talking to Dr. Mahindra, a neurologist, and I'm also talking to Reverend Frederick Beuchi, an epilepsy activist. Do you have any questions regarding our topic of today? Or you are living with somebody who has epilepsy and you've been wondering, I have this question, who can answer me? Get in touch with us. Our SMS line is 22232. That is 22232. You can also WhatsApp us. Our WhatsApp line is 0708 222 323. That is 0708 222 323. The numbers are right at the bottom of your screen. Please send all the questions. Before we wrap up the show, we'll ensure that Dr. Mahindra, together with Reverend Beuchi, will be glad to answer you. So let's get back to Dr. Mahindra. You know, Reverend Beuchi mentioned about EGG. You know,
EEG.
EEG.
It has a long scientific. I'm learning to
Yes.
electro
So
something.
what is that, and how is it related to epilepsy?
Okay, do you know what is a ECG? Electrocardiogram for the heart. It's a very simple thing.
Yeah.
So understand this. Most of the cells, even if in potato you find electricity, correct?
Yes.
There are people who can generate electricity out of potato. So every cell has an electrical activity.
Yes.
All of the neurons, they communicate through electrochemical medium. Okay? So whenever the information is going, even if you are looking at me and trying to understand me, everything is electrical. Okay? And we can record these things. Okay?
Yes.
So brain as such has got one of the highest consumption of oxygen in blood per minute. And it is continuously creating electricity and electrical signals in order to get information from the whole body and at the same time dispense whatever is required. Say for example, if you get a pinprick, suddenly you do this.
Yes.
But this pinprick sensation from here to there to the brain, it is a electrical activity. And we can measure these. So all of these, if it is heart, so heart is also a spontaneous electrical activity, keeps on going automatically. And we put some electrodes here, we get something called electrocardiograph.
Yes.
If it is brain, brain's name is encephalon. So it is electroencephalograph, EEG, ECG. So it's simple.
Okay.
I mean, if you just break it down. So the primary function of EEG is to first show that there are abnormal waves in the brain. Some patients, I won't say everyone, but there's some people who may have hysterical attacks. They can just fall down. Some people can have a syncope and they fall down because there was sudden lowering of blood pressure. So these people, this can also look like epilepsy or convulsion. How do we differentiate? If it is being generated in brain with abnormal waves, then we need to record it. That's how EEG is. Okay. Um, then, as we have grown up with epilepsy and its science, now the way we do EEG, particularly at our center, is that we want to know from where it's coming, because as I said, the source is important. Okay.
Yes.
But still, majority of reporting which is done is still a generalized thing that okay, there is a convulsion, there is an abnormal wave. That's it. They don't say where it is. Like for example, we have earthquakes. Luckily, Kenya is very resistant to them. Turkey had it.
Yes.
But then they have something called as epicenter. Okay. And so in that case, we are not able to do anything about epicenter. But here, if we find an epicenter, then we can actually look at it if we can remove it. So that's how electrocardiography EEG holds a very important role. And then the waveforms and its patterns can enable us to differentiate what kind of epilepsy it is.
Yes.
Because then different drugs act differently in the brain. So which drug is required in which type of convulsion? It's important to know the electroencephalogram. And one more thing I would like to say
Yes.
is that once EEG is done, as we want to see something, sometimes what happens that when patient go for an EEG, usually it is done for 45 minutes to maximum 1 hour. That's the time when patient may not even convulse. That's maybe patient came with a medication. And we actually want patient to convulse during EEG. Okay. So for that, we always prefer a longer term EEG. That patient should be at least, right now we are able to do up to 10 hours. So we admit the patient with us full day, and then we do their EEG on a long term. Even better than that is called as a video EEG, in which we have a machine where there is a camera and it coordinates with whatever movement is coming. Say for example, it started with the finger, okay, and then it propagates into hand, and then it goes like so. There are different epilepsies or seizures in which there is a particular posturing. Like in some, they actually make a bow like this. So there is a position. So when we see an action on a camera and a wave which corresponds to exact that same moment, we are better able to diagnose from where epilepsy is coming.
Yes.
Okay. Even more than that, if we have found that okay, it's coming from say right side temporal lobe, but we still don't know because temporal lobe is still big. We can't remove the entire temporal lobe. So we find that this is showing some abnormality in MRI. Now we can admit the patient and we can actually put needles into brain, that from where, how much depth it is coming. So we can actually go at a millimeter precision from where conversion is coming. So that is called as a stereo EEG. Okay?
Yes.
So these types of EEGs.
And the different types is to help you discover the different types of epilepsy that the
Yes.
patient could be having.
Yeah.
Yeah. And apart from what both of you have mentioned as a symptom, you know, the seizures, are there other symptoms that one can look out for to tell this person is
Yeah,
epileptic?
it all depends upon whether we are talking about simple seizures or we are talking about complex seizures or focal or generalized. Nowadays, we can just say, because you know, if we go into classification, it becomes too scientific. But because it's a platform for a common person, so for them it's important that whether it is focal or it is generalized, whether it is simple or it is complex. So focal means there's only maybe a lip movement or maybe a eye twitching or maybe a hand, and it remains for a few minutes and it goes. Then it's a focal seizure. Sometimes it's not motor, like what I described is a motor where a muscle is being moved. Sometimes it's sensory. So patient feels abnormal smell or abnormal visions, right?
Yeah.
So these are sensory seizures. If they happen in the entire body, they're called generalized. Okay. And if the patient is maintaining consciousness, then they're called simple seizures. If they are not maintaining consciousness, they become, they don't remember it, they have gone into a trance, okay, then it's called as a complex seizure, okay. And then one very common thing which was found in kids, they can suddenly become just absent. They become like a statue. Few seconds, 4 or 5 seconds. Sometimes, you know, if a guest has come at home and they are coming with a glass and they just become a statue.
That could be a seizure.
And then they don't even know.
Oh my.
They don't even know it
Yeah,
happened, but
yeah.
you observed. They're called absent seizures. Okay, so there are these kind of seizures which we can call as, you know, seizures. But most common and most disabling are when suddenly patient becomes very tight. Okay, and then they gather their hands. They can extend their legs, and then after that they start shaking. Okay, and then the head can go on one side or the opposite side. Usually it goes opposite to the side which is creating these seizures. So if they're going like this, it can be on this side. If they're going on the left side. There can be abnormal eye movements. These are called tonic-clonic seizures, where ultimately patient becomes unconscious.
Yes.
Okay, and they also pee in their clothes. Tongue bites happen. Okay, another one which is very dangerous is a drop attack. The patient is going and suddenly just falls like a stone, and they get very bad injuries here and there, maybe on the forehead. Those things happen. So these are different types of manifestations that we can see.
Before I go to Reverend Beuchi, you've mentioned something, and I know all mothers would be like, huh? That a child would just stare, and that could be a seizure. Are all stares seizures that mothers or maybe fathers watching should be worried? Or is there something that is a bit unique that should worry your child?
Even if any of these, what I have told, it has happened, the child should immediately be checked. Okay? Because the biggest problem with conversion is, suppose some young man or young woman, just as in Reverend's case, sister, they are maybe driving a bike outside and suddenly got a conversion. So for him, he just said that, you know, they feel abnormal, why it is happening to me. But then it's life threatening in the first place. Maybe you are sitting on the parapet of a wall on the first floor, you fall from there. You are near a fire, you can burn yourself. You are near a very hot water, or even in water, you can drown.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a life-threatening potential of each convulsion. And other than that is if you become unconscious, at the same time you're also, the patient is Actually, that's the time when suddenly a content of the stomach can go into windpipe and they can aspirate and they can die. So conversion can be life-threatening. That's really important. So whenever they see, they should immediately see a neurologist.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's go to Beuchi now. Back to your great sister.
Yeah.
As a caregiver, what are some of the challenges that you encountered in taking care of her?
Well, first of all, I would actually give reference starting with what my mother was going through first before I came in.
Yeah.
I think the biggest challenge for her was that even though we had established that our sister had epilepsy, it's not like it was something very new to us. Of course, where I come from, there were cases that we would refer to, but there were not so many. Either one or two people who we have known all our lives to have that epilepsy. And it was chronic to an extent that everybody knew about it and nothing had been done about it. So they were just leading their lives.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, these 2 or 3 people that I grew up knowing, they passed on. And that was the sad thing. The closest person I come to know about epilepsy, it was after watching that film of Jesus. At some point, he healed a young person who had epilepsy.
Yes.
And that verse says that Jesus' shadow was cast on this person and the demons for epilepsy left. So you can imagine with that understanding, and you have a person here who has that condition, and everybody else around you knows that this is not a medical condition. So that was the first challenge, actually. What prompted me to really want to prove to people that this is a medical condition,
Yes.
especially after we saw the change in our sister, was when all this was happening, I was a youth chairperson in my local church. My mom was women's chair lady in that church.
Yes.
And my dad was a chairman of development in church issues. And within that period, even before we finished our term, we were all dropped out of the church leadership, because the word that was going around was, there's something that we have done to our sister so that we can get riches.
Like a sacrifice kind of a thing.
Exactly. And it's such a narrative down at the cost. It's so sad. So it started at that point.
Allow me to pause you there, Reverend Beuchi. We need to sync that and just find how did that happen, and also demystify some of the myths
and misconceptions,
misconceptions that people have around epilepsy. You're watching Health Check right here on Hope TV. I'm hosting Dr. Mahindra, a neurologist, and Reverend Frederick Beuchi, an epilepsy activist, on Health Check tonight. Do you have any question? 22232 is our SMS line, and 0708 222 323 is our WhatsApp line. After this break, we'll be sampling some of your questions and comments regarding today's episode. Don't go too far.
This week on Testify.
No. There's nothing like salvation. And if I hear that word from your mouth again, I will beat you into pulp. Do not even tell me about salvation. So I went and told my friends, I'm sorry, I can't add this God to my list. My mom has discarded this God. I told God, now here I am, Matatu, they're on a strike. How am I getting to Githurai? Imagine someone just came with the car and said, the Lord told me to give you a lift to wherever you're going.
Oh.
Huh? Okay. And I got scared.
Hope TV. Look and live. Every every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. Spotlight.
Do you feel that they are in a place where they can effect a Barack Obama moment?
When you hear the word of God and you hear Jesus is speaking,
Real talk on real issues.
You know, the Bible says faith without works is dead.
The truth of the gospel that will survive the time is not a health and wealth gospel.
When there is time to harmonize and bring one composite amendment.
With idealistic, thought-provoking guests.
So people come to be serviced, to be encouraged, to be empowered.
When the storm is over, you desire the closeness you have with God.
Hosted by Reverend Edward Furi.
Back to Health Check right here at Top TV. Look and Live. My name is Grace Mutiso, and our focus for today is epilepsy. Do you have any question about it? I can see a few of us have already texted in, and WhatsApped us. Will be getting them. Number again is 0708 222 or 222 WhatsApp line. Drop on those platforms. We'll be getting to them in a short while. I'm hosting Dr. Mahindra, a neurologist, and also Reverend Frederick Beuchi, an epilepsy activist. And let's go back to Reverend. What? So you were, for lack of a better, demoted, all of you from position because there were myths around your sister being epileptic. So how did you handle that? How did you get out of that?
Say there wasn't much that you would really do about it, because whatever actions that had been taken then were informed by what people knew epilepsy was. Okay, so whatever information that they had is what they used against what now as a family we were going through.
Okay.
And you couldn't really blame them that much, because I've just told you the closest I had come to know about epilepsy. And I think just like any other situations, they hit hard when you are directly touched with them. And so it was for us as a family.
Okay.
So there wasn't much that we could do. But that was the beginning of really experiencing a lot of stigma. And you see, they say when one person has epilepsy, indirectly, she or he affects about 5 people because of the concern that you'll need to have towards this one person. And so as a family, it was like all of us were affected in one way or another. And because of that effect, every other person there was kind of like driving that stigma towards us as a family, not even my sister, so to say.
Okay.
And that was the biggest challenge, trying to prove to people that this is a medical condition. We are also trying to understand it on how best we can help her, yet already people have a pre-perceived mind of what they think it is, informed by traditions and culture and of different conditions that people know about.
Okay.
So that was, I mean, the biggest challenge that we were facing then.
Before we go to the questions, Dr. Mahindra, what are some of the misconceptions you've had, maybe in a minute, about epilepsy as you deal with the different patients?
One of the most important thing, so now because I have also practiced in India and I'm practicing in Africa, this myth is more rooted here, that this is something which is,
Witchcraft.
It's a witchcraft. Okay. But I think as the education progresses, such things, they get busted, because with Reverend, we just met last week, and he was kind enough to invite me into this talk. I never knew this sad story that he was actually demoted. And sometimes you realize that, is it really happening around you? Because now we say we are in a 21st century. But ironically, when I came here, it was basically two very key person in Kenya, one very high in politics, and one a very prominent senior, what do you say, he was a father in a church in Umoja here, who actually became like my brother. His sister, I had operated in India. So he started calling me to the church, then they introduced me to the church, and we started doing free camps. And in each camp, which was focused more on epilepsy and cerebral palsy, we would get anything from 400 to 700 patients in one camp. So I could see that people are ready to listen to me, and they don't want to believe in witchcraft.
Yeah.
But then I've also known a family where a disease like a Parkinson's disease, an advanced Parkinson's disease, and this family lives in Runda, very rich people. And we diagnosed them in India. When I used to come and see her, the mother had isolated her from the room because she thought it's a witchcraft. And this lady was not even able to move. It was very painful to see that, the mother wanted this girl who was about 40 years, that you should take the traditional route of treatment when we were treating her. So, yeah, but I think with NECC and Father Frederick, we would be able to create some programs, maybe some light-hearted programs.
Yes.
Because I recently also come to know someone who is he's an expert in puppet shows. We're thinking maybe we present the information in a very dilute form to common people so that they know that there is a condition which can be easily treated. Sometimes just a mild dose of anti-epileptic is all that they need.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, I would say a very positive thing about epilepsy. Epilepsy means high electrical current in the brain. It means many kids actually have a very high voltage brain. And a very world famous cricketer, John T. Rhodes, he was world's fastest fielder from South Africa. He had epilepsy. And because he had epilepsy, I believe that his neurons were much faster than normal. So he could create catches. He could think that this batsman is going to hit this way. He would jump before the shot is happened. So there are good things also which are happening. And then also the misbeliefs are that, this spreads from one to the other, which never happens.
Yeah.
Never ever happens.
It's not contagious.
Yes, it's not contagious.
Okay.
It limits to only one child, and in 85% cases, we would be able to heal the child forever.
Okay.
Okay. So I would encourage most of the viewers to take up the workup of epilepsy, and we try to find out the cause, and we can treat them. Many with medical, but now even surgical therapy is going so much that now we are advocating as a first-line therapy. We have operated as old as 1 day child for epilepsy in India. And we have a long track record of more than 20 years of a very, very successful epilepsy program.
So it's doable.
Yes,
they
it's
can
doable.
get treatment.
Yes.
Okay. I'll ask the sample a few questions before time catches up with us.
Yes.
A viewer says, hi, I'm Shimaka Joseph watching from Kakamega. My question is, what makes epileptic patients drool and have abnormal body movements?
So drooling usually is with mental retardation much more than epilepsy. We also have children who are very widely damaged brain because of maybe very high jaundice during the first few days after birth, or some event that maybe they didn't cry enough, which goes more in the spectrum of cerebral palsy. But because there is a brain damage, they have epilepsy, okay? And they are the kids who drool most because they do not have this, there is a complex movement of whenever saliva builds up, we aspirate it, we take it inside our mouth and we swallow it. So that complex movement is there, it's not learned by them. That's why they drool, because they don't know it was supposed to be taken.
Okay.
So that's an abnormal movement is because there are a lot of multiple discharges happening in their we call as a motor cortex of brain, motor cortex part of the brain, which is causing abnormal movements. So I am very sure this patient, this lady's concern is more with cerebral palsy rather than epilepsy. Epilepsy is just an associate problem with that.
Okay. Another is asking, if one has seizure attacks, is he or she put on lifetime medication?
If the onset of seizure is new, okay, sometimes say it's febrile seizures, then they might need treatment for sometimes post-traumatic cases also. They have convulsions, but they can also be put short-term anticonvulsants. Later we can withdraw. So sometimes we follow some rough rules, as we just give for 3 months and we stop and we see if patient is convulsing or not. If they are convulsing, we keep it for 1 year and then we stop. If again convulse, 3 years, then you stop. Again they convulse, then lifetime.
Okay.
So this is a rough rule which can be followed. A lot of people don't follow it, but I follow it. So
One
not
more, yes.
necessarily.
Okay. One more. This one says, my brother is a victim of epilepsy. Now it's like 13 years. My question is, how much does it cost to treat an epileptic patient? The drugs he uses is called Tegretol. Yes.
Tegretol.
Is there any other medicines better than this and the one he is using?
So there is nothing like a better medicine. Medicines are always appropriate. You know, like people say we want a best doctor, and I say there's nothing like a best doctor.
Yeah.
The one who is most appropriate is the one who is available.
Yes.
And who is ready to treat you is the best doctor for you. Likewise, for different conditions of epilepsy, there are different drugs. Tegretol is one of the most common drug that even we use. It is a very good drug, but unless we analyze, we can't say that's one. Second thing is it also depends upon patient's body weight, how much we are giving. That will give us, I mean, maybe like I had a patient who was 105 kgs. He works in police and he is in a national team also. He 105 kg guy was only getting 100 milligram of Tegretol, which was very low dose for him because it was supposed to be 1.2 grams. So even at 1.2 grams, he was convulsing. So we had to go to 1.8 grams according to his body weight.
Okay.
But at that level, he was showing toxicity of the drug. So we had to come down again. But so we have to titrate. Yeah. So far as the cost is concerned, that we cannot say because some people only require a clinical examination and an EEG and an MRI.
Yes.
Okay. So that would come to maybe around 30 to 50,000. It depends upon which type of MRI. Different hospitals have got different rates.
So it varies per patient?
It varies a bit.
Okay.
Sometimes then we have to do a full battery of tests, which is not even available in the country right now. So then, but we are actually gathering a team. Like many patients might need a PET scan. PET scan costs 75,000 to 100,000. So it all depends. Like if someone needs an MRI, EEG, PET scan, then it would go up to 150,000, 200,000.
Okay.
Something like that.
What more? Then I'll be preparing to wrap it up. This one says, my daughter has a seizure once when she had high fever as an infant, and it has never occurred again until at age 14 when she has another seizure out of nowhere. But since she was just getting ready to join Form 1, doctor said it was anxiety. 2 years later, it came back, but now it was very frequent, like 2 times a week. And at times she was diagnosed with epilepsy. Now she's 32 on constant medication, but she does not get seizures when triggered. She has had herself suffered broken jaws, shoulders, and has suffered a lot. I'm worried of letting her move out to live on her own. Should we seek a second opinion?
Yes,
In a
of
minute.
course. We would recommend ourselves. But as I said, usually febrile seizures are very self-limited, but it can be wrong as well because it can show that there is a predisposition to convulsions.
Yes.
And then sometimes a neurodegeneration happens in the brain, which can predispose these patients to more and more frequent convulsions. Usually not all patients require surgery. It all depends upon what we are finding in the EEG, then in the MRI. We are finding something very clear-cut focus. and if patient is not being controlled on a single drug, or even with a maximum drug for more than 2 years, nowadays we can go for surgery. Ideally, it was 2 drugs, maximum dose for 2 to 3 years. Then we start working for surgery. But now, as more and more data is accumulated about safety of surgery, mind you, epilepsy surgeries are few of the safest surgeries on the planet.
Okay.
So they have got very few side effects, and most of them are very, very successful, even up to 70%. Most of the series in the world, 70% success rate.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
So first of all, a workup has to be done. For me, I would always like to do a detailed workup on patients who are particularly living alone.
Okay.
Okay, and multiple traumas, because there's no one to look after them. So yeah, workup, definitely second opinion is required.
Thank you. We have to wrap it up.
Yeah,
Maybe
sure.
in a second, my director telling me time is up.
It's up.
Reverend Beuchi,
Yeah.
what would be your parting shot?
Well, my parting shot would be this, especially going to caregivers, that epilepsy is manageable, epilepsy is treatable.
Okay.
So don't sit at home with that child or with that person that is having this condition and wait for the worst to happen.
Okay.
Just take that chance and opportunity to go seek medical attention.
Okay.
And the reason why we are here is to give that information. Just the way I got information through media,
Okay.
I think this is one of the platforms that if you're lucky to get this message, then take the necessary action.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Mahindra, and thank you, Reverend Frederick, for being with us. And God bless you for the great work you're doing as you reach out to these great people in our community. Powerful people, I call them.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. That's all we had for you today. So I wish you a blessed night as we've been focusing on epilepsy, but keep it right here, Top TV, Look and Live. There is more coming up for you. God willing, we'll do this again next week on Tuesday. Remember to follow us at Top TV Kenya. You can get the conversation, share the link, and of course, catch the repeat tomorrow at around 11 in the morning. Shalom and God bless.
Thank you.